Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got a couple pilots in the audience. We talk about airplanes from time to time. Here's a strange story all over the news, sent to me by a bunch of people, and it's popped up in places including Jalopnik, where I used to write. So I'll go with their version of the story by Andy Kelmowitz. Terrorized my family. Pilot accused of stalking woman with his plane for years. So we've heard of stalkers who follow someone around on foot or who drive around and skulk through the neighborhood in a car, slowly looking for somebody. Here's somebody who's accused of stalking from an airplane. Yes, stalking from above. A man in New York has spent the past 4 years tormenting a family from the sky, according to the family. He's been charged with threatening a young girl days after he was reportedly arrested for using his Cessna to stalk her mother for over 4 years. In case you're curious, it's 1976 Cessna 180 prop plane. The man allegedly flew his plane over the woman's house in a town in New York many times a week. His altitude was so low that windows would rattle and the roof would shake. To make matters worse, he was doing this as the woman's husband was dying of cancer inside the house. The woman said, "It's a nightmare. He's terrorized my family. We've been so afraid. All these years he's been winning because nobody could do anything until now." She added that she wasn't sure if the man would fly into their house because she wasn't sure what he was capable of. So they reportedly complained to the FAA and the New York State Police about the issue, but they say they got nowhere with that. But Fox News now reports that the man had been arrested at least 5 times in the past for his from-the-air style of stalking, but that has not slowed him down. So he denies ever having contact with these people. He told police that if he wanted to harm her, he could have done so very easily, but never did. Now, that is not an argument you want to raise. You just don't want, it doesn't look good. So you don't pro tip, don't raise that argument, ever. He also said the FAA had not told him that he couldn't fly and that he flew over this town to take pictures for their Facebook community page. His latest arrest might change that, but it doesn't actually have to do with the aerial stunts. The county sheriff's deputy actually arrested the man on criminal contempt charges after he was allegedly tied to a Facebook account he used to threaten the daughter of the woman that he was accused of stalking. He allegedly wrote, "Change your wicked ways, girl. Karma is a wonderful thing." And then square brackets, your daughter, presumably her name was there, "will be next. You will see them all pass before you." And again, someone's going to go, dude, pass can mean all kinds of things. Like I pass cars in the road. Yeah, but they'll ask somebody, like, I don't know, a jury, in context, what do you think that meant? So as Andy Kelmowitz writes for Jalopnik, what the F, dude? To make matters even more despicable, police say he used the account to post a disturbing message on her husband's obituary page. When time's up, time's up. We all have to live with our karma, he wrote. So apparently he had some feelings about the husband, too. The latest charges come just 4 days after police arrested him for allegedly flying over the house in September, which was a violation of an order of protection. The FBI reportedly notified police, and they were waiting for him at the airport when he landed. He's pleaded not guilty to a number of charges, and he promptly posted bail. At this point, you got to be wondering why all this is happening. Well, you got your story here. The trouble started in November of 2019 because the woman runs a cafe in a picturesque town of about 1,300 people, about 200 miles north of New York City. The man is a retired merchant marine, and he used to come into the cafe several times a week. As far as she was concerned, he was just a regular customer, but one day he sent her an alarming email. It was a picture of him tied up with a naked woman, and he was telling me to open my mind. So this is what the woman says, and at the time, of course, she was married. She sent me a respectful Facebook message and said that she did take exception to the graphic photos, and then she blocked him. That rejection appeared to have sparked an obsession, and he began flying over her home, taking photos of her backyard and car, and posting them on a community Facebook page. When she headed to work or walked her dog or took her daughter to school, she'd find him sitting in his car at the end of her driveway or hiding nearby. So it does get a little worse. Eventually, an anonymous package arrived in the mail with pictures of her family with check marks next to their faces. The post office could not identify the sender, and in November of last year, he used his plane to drop tomatoes on her and her neighbors' properties. So, you think back to things that little kids did in school to get someone's attention. And here's a guy flying an airplane dropping tomatoes on someone's house. The next time he flew, police were waiting for him at the airport. They looked at his cell phone and found dozens of photos of the woman and her family at various locations. He was arrested for stalking and hit with a restraining order, but that did not bar him from flying over her home. And again, this is all happening while her husband is dying of cancer. So she said, as Dave's cancer progressed, I couldn't fight two battles. I stopped calling the police because they wouldn't do anything. The entire time Dave was in hospice, he would just circle us 3 or 4 times a week. So you're in your house with your dying spouse, and outside there's an airplane circling over your house, photographing you, and the pilot's sending you weird stuff. So the husband passed away in May, and the man flew over the house the next day. Now, the order had lapsed the same day that he died, and he was out in front of the house a few days later. So they got a new protective order, and this time it included a no-fly order. But that didn't stop him. Instead of taking off from the airport in Saratoga County, he started taking off in Maine and Vermont before he was arrested again. The woman said that she hopes this latest arrest will finally put this whole horrible situation to bed. So the Guardian has reported that the man is required to stop flying any aircraft under the protection order. It remains in effect until a court date in November on the 30th. And that's the kind of crazy story. And I remember when stalking laws were first passed, people complained about them because some of the earliest ones were kind of vague. And so I remember hearing stories about somebody who said, this person's stalking me, and they got an order to stop them. And they lived in a small town, and the order said you can't pass within so many feet of somebody's house. And there's only one road through town, so to get from here to here, you got to go past this house. Things like that. So they had to iron out a lot of the wrinkles, as we say, in the statutes when they first started passing them. But obviously, if somebody is flying an airplane over your house and circling your house in such a way that you can read the numbers on it, for instance, with the naked eye, and it's happening a lot, and other people can attest that this is happening, like the neighbors can obviously hear it and see it also, that's a problem. That's a problem. And the sad part is, I think pretty much all of us know enough about human nature to know what's going on here. So the guy meets this woman. She's nice to him because she works at a cafe, and he thinks there's more to it than that, and she doesn't, and she's married, and he takes rejection really hard, and just so happens he's got an airplane. Next thing you know, tomatoes are falling on his house. Now, again, I'm not a pilot. I've mentioned it before. I'm not a pilot. But my pilots in the audience, Dean, how you doing, can check in, because I think it might be wrong on some level, to throw things out of your airplane at someone's house. Now, surprisingly, I don't think the FAA actually puts a height limit and says you can fly this height down to this height legally, or altitude, and the second you drop 1 inch below that, it's illegal. I don't think there's a drop-dead deck like that in most places. I think there's actually more vague laws, such as above a certain height that's considered to be reasonable, whatever. Because among other things, when you land, you got to come through whatever height it is, because you got to go from up here down to the ground, right? And so I can see why someone might say, well, gee, there's a plane over your house. Yeah. Did it hit your house? Did it hit anything else? No. But, of course, when someone's coming in and doing this to harass somebody and throwing things from the plane, if that's true, that's going to be the real, cherry on top. So we'll see what happens with the court date on this. But this history appears to be pretty well documented. Because when somebody says, I'm not stalking them, and his phone is loaded with photos of them and their house and their kids and their cars, that's going to look kind of bad when you get to court. So we'll see what happens. But the story here from Jalopnik, but many other places, many of them emphasize the tomatoes from the sky part, because that appears to be like one step beyond just the goofy into the utterly crazy. But where you draw the line between goofy and crazy is completely a subjective thing. It is up to you or me. And we get to do that because this is America. So, from Jalopnik, Andy Kalmowitz wrote this. Terrorized my family. Pilot accused of stalking woman with his plane for years. And a lot of people sent that. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Tennis would be way more exciting to watch if they used dogs to fetch the balls.